Hey guys, do ideas, thoughts, or ideology or any kind of subscribed way of thinking making you uptight? When people say things, does it make you feel bad, weird, or angry? Well, you've come to the right place. This week's reading of the Aten Ray newsletter. This is episode 60, titled Are You a Buttfucker? Attacking the Rigid Critical Mind as a Path to Peace. My girlfriend and I have this funny thing we do, where when inspiration strikes, we say something extreme, attempting to surprise each other and make each other laugh. It's fun because it usually comes out of nowhere, and the response is something like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you just said that." Last week, out of nowhere, and I have no idea how this popped in my head, I called her a buttfucker, and she died laughing. Now, if you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you might know why this is so funny. It was a pretty common name people would call each other, but it's been so out of fashion for so long, it brought back a long lost memory. And on top of it, it's just such a ridiculous thing to say. Thus, it was side-splitting funny. Now, in today's environment, most would deem that not funny, jumping to the conclusion that it's making fun of gay people or simply shaming someone somehow for their nature, taste, or preferences. But at the time, I don't think most people saw it that way. It was just a funny thing to call a friend, and you laughed together. Much like fart jokes or anything about the strangeness of the human body tends to get people giggling. But for some reason, as a society, we stopped giggling. There's something about learning to laugh at oneself and the ridiculousness of the world we find ourselves in. I mean, like the comedian Pete Holmes says, we're on a huge rock, spinning in space, and nobody really knows what's going on, pointing out how absolutely absurd the reality we are in is. How does having a really tight anus remedy any of that? The flexibility test. The spiritual entertainer Alan Watts often told a story about a Zen master who noticed a geshe displaying poise that suggested she had Zen training. Zen at its core is about absolute flexibility of the mind, reacting to reality as it happens rather than clinging to rigid thinking or emotional reactions. To test her, the master picked up a burning charcoal from the hearth and offered it to her as a gift. Not to be ungracious, she adapted on the fly, extending the thick silk sleeve of her kimono over her hand. She accepted the gift of the coal and carried it away. She saved her skin, but burned her fine silk. Feeling clever, she also grabbed another piece of hot charcoal and offered it to him as a gift, expecting to catch him in the same trap. But rigid, retaliatory thinking always blinds us to the present moment. The master paused, calmly pulled out a cigarette, leaned down to light it off her burning coal, and thanked her. She was left standing there stunned. By clinging to her resentment and trying to win a game, her mind had gone rigid, while the master stayed completely fluid. Life on Earth in itself is pretty bland and boring. The arrival of human consciousness to the Earth provides a distinct, very unique opportunity of varied expression on the planet. Graciousness, kindness, cleverness, when expressed in a sense of wonder and awe, is a highly refined expression of presence. But it's not by accident. These expressions come from a soul's experimentation in the earth plane. Many souls play with manipulation and darkness, and eventually see it's a dead-end game. And in that suffering, you get in touch with the things that feel better. Things like kindness, goodness, honesty, and beauty. But even that becomes its own type of extreme, and boredom sets in. Then there's a third path of humor, cleverness, creativity, mystery, and awe. You see this in magicians who expand their consciousness to come up with all sorts of really interesting and creative ways to insert wonder into others' lives. You see this in comedians who transform the mundane into a way to laugh at ourselves And you also see this in really great storytellers. The archetype of the jester. In the royal court, the jester played one of the most vital roles in keeping a ruler sane and society balanced. The jester's job was to humiliate the king, or put another way, to keep his ego in check. The true danger was never the jester's offensive words. It was a king who lost the ability to take a joke. Sound familiar? In 2026, right? Yeah. Consider King Henry VIII, a monarch famous for executing anyone who dared cross him. Yet his jester, Will Somers, was one of the few people who could openly mock the king's hypocrisy, his terrible financial decisions, and his booming weight. Somers could say things that would get any other lord beheaded because Henry understood a crucial truth. A leader who silences laughter is a leader consumed by fragile pride. When a king gets so blinded by resentment that he hangs the jester over a crude joke, the kingdom knows it's in grave danger. Words don't destroy empires. The inability to absorb a laugh does. Without humility, power becomes tyrannical and life becomes rigid, colorless, and dangerous. Tea break. The advent of people standing up at comedy shows to express offense is a sign that this understanding has eroded. Today's comedians are the modern jesters, poking at our sacred cows to keep us from becoming solemn tyrants of our own making. When we lose our sense of humor, we let petty resentment take root. History shows us where unexamined resentment leads. It goes first to the silencing of speech, then to the burning of books, and eventually to the destruction of bodies. So why do I bring all this up? I bring this up because what we are seeing today are warning signs that we have lost something sacred. It's not about crude shock value or the most extreme expressions of humor. It's about what happens when our minds freeze over, when we stop laughing, and when we start attacking each other out of pure rigidity. There's an old story of a foolish traveler who came across a massive ancient oak tree standing beside a patch of flexible bamboo during a fierce storm. The oak prided itself in its unyielding strength, standing stiff and refusing to bow an inch to the howling winds. The bamboo simply bent, swaying easily with every blast of air. When the storm finally passed, the proud oak lay uprooted and shattered on the ground, while the bamboo straightened itself out unharmed. The oak represents our fragile ego when we take ourselves too seriously. It breaks because it cannot yield. The ability to laugh at ourselves is the flex of the bamboo. It serves a vital purpose, to remind us that none of us are infallible, to diffuse our collective hubris, and to keep the shadows of dogma at bay. So whatever label you carry, or whatever jokes or whatever joke hits a little too close to home, do not be the oak. Soften your grip, bend a little in the wind, and whatever you do, just don't let yourself get too uptight. And that's this week's newsletter. The work that I do is about sovereignty, and it's about freeing the mind. It's just anything that's just not modern society, pretty much. So, and I work with businesses. I did brand development for 30 years. So if anyone's interested in transforming their current business environment, or like a personal reading, or would like any kind of consulting regarding sovereign living, you can reach me at atenray.com, atenray.com. And you can just check out atenray.com to get a little more information on what I'm doing. Anyway, thanks for joining us for this week's reading of our weekly Aten Ray newsletter. You can find it at atenray.beehive.com, and you can find a link on the website, atenray.com. All right, see you guys next week.